Hey party people, this is Jeremy for MVM, and today I'm here with another Kickstarter preview for Sheol. This is a game for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 60 to 120 minutes, and this is going to depend on player count and also the mission. And in this game, we are in a very dark world. This game is set on Earth in the last kind of area here called the Citadel. It's a big, bright place. And it all started with us being on the moon. So we're definitely in a very high, in a technological age here. And we were on the moon and sending scouts out around to this dark side of the moon. They weren't coming back. But what did come back was this darkness, and this darkness, flood of darkness, I believe is what they refer to with Sheol. And it enveloped the moon, and then it came to Earth. And then all of a sudden now we have this shrouded in darkness, but our citadel, which is full of this light and this resource called Lux, is illuminating and protecting us from the shadows that lurk out there. And the shadows are these different beasts, small, medium, and very large, that are just kind of looming out there. But it is still our job to go out and find more humans. It's our job to go out and get this resource called Lux we have to mine out there. But we're also doing that in developing our city as well over a campaign and several missions. It's got quite a bit going on. They sent me an introductory scenario. We're going to be playing the role of these scouts who are going to go out there and kick some butt, reveal some shadows, and just gather a whole bunch of stuff. It's got some really interesting and unique little mechanism things going on in it. But I'm going to show you some of that. I'm also going to kind of detail some of the things that they sent to me that are extra versus the introductory scenario. We're going to cover as much as we can, party people. So please stick with me. Let's go ahead and get to the boards. Okay, party people, let's take a quick look at the setup here for Sheol. Here on the table, I have this big board. There are 2 sides to the board. One side has to do with the boss, which we do not have today, although I do have this big card here that explains what it does, has a deck. It's got a 4-card system and stuff like that. It's really complicated in a good way because it's kind of a hand kind of AI that they have going on, and things trigger according to cards in there. So if you're looking for that AI deck, it is in there. But going back to the setup, the other side of the board is for that. But this is the main board. In the middle, you're going to have what's called the Citadel right there. And that actually will be a miniature in the game that will develop according to what you're doing in the development side over here. Now, that's one of the things that's going to be off screen, and some of these things will be off screen. But your health is going to be at 10, and you do not want that to be destroyed. It's also going to have some development things on here, these spots right here, and they will be used by cards, and you have a faction board up here as well. All that stuff will happen in between missions so that you can develop your your civilization in there. But that's all that's what's off on the side. You also have something off on the side, which is your inventory. I mean, your purchase market, in a sense. You can, as long as you have paths of light that go back to the Citadel, you can purchase things from there. Also, on the right side over here is where all the enemies are. You have a shadow board, which is going to show different threats that may happen when you cross a certain threshold, which I'll talk about in the gameplay. These effects will take place. I just happen to have one out right now. And it's also going to tell you the health of these little blip tokens, which are part of the gameplay, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But these are little blip marks. They look straight up like little blips on like a reader, like a reader in the future, like kind of like aliens in a sense, like dunk, dunk. You don't know which way they're going. And we have our list. Our murderers row in a sense here. We have our devourer, our lurker, and our moth, and they only sent 1 figure of each. This is what's in the base game, so those are the ones you're going to see. And then I have 2 heralds, the hunter and the awakener. Those are going to be a little bit more of the heavier things. They come out depending on certain conditions, or they may be out on the board. This is according to mission setup, which there's a big mission setup here, which I'm not going to talk about, but they gave us an introductory mission. And then finally, I have a boss kind of standee here, but it's on all that's going to be off screen. There's a ton of tokens off screen for different environmental things that come up, markers for targets and whatnot. But let's stick with the characters in the board here, all right? So we have our Citadel, and we have our first couple little light paths that we're going to create. And then we also have these little lands out here. There are levels 1, 2, and 3. So we have 1s here, we have level 2s, and then level 3 over here. And as you can see, they're really good. When I get some close pictures of theirs for you to see, you can see as you go further and further out, the kind of the settlements or lands that are out there are looking a little bit more and more weirder because they're probably cobbling together stuff in the darkness, or there's just something going on there. You also see these little spots right here. These are spawning points. for the blips that come out, and they will also have, they will kind of move towards these outer areas here where it says Alpha, A, and Omega, and that's where people are going to kind of, that's where the enemy is going to kind of move through to get to me, and they also will hit right there as well, so they'll kind of walk straight up and attack me. Back behind here, you cannot see, you're probably going to see just me right here doing this. This is where all our characters are set up. So let's talk about that real quick. There are 4 characters available in the base game. You have the Menad, the Cyclops, the Breathless, and the Pioneer. And they're all different. They all have different skills, and they all have different decks that represent who they are and the type of character they are. Some are emphasizing movement, range, kind of like leadership. Some can fix things better than others, and it's all represented in your deck of multi-use cards. But the characters, which I'll get to a little bit more specifically in the gameplay, will use Lux to take actions and different things like that. They'll also have their little weapons and stuff. So we'll talk about that during the gameplay. We also have our mission. Now, the mission is based on the cards. They'll have a setup for the mission, how many die you roll. We have die for that. We have die for our gravity. We have a Sheol die. We have our attack die, all that different things. We have the enemy attack die. But all the stuff that you're doing and rolling for will be determined by that mission setup that's written for you. The big one right here is that you have these mission cards. And I have a deck specifically for this mission. It's A through H. So when you get through H, the mission is over, it's complete. But these are branching path cards. These big cards here will start, and they will send you off into different situations. So these are the 2 that I start with. Okay, so that is really the run of the setup. This is the whole board and everything. Let's get to the actual gameplay so I can show you the meat and bones of how this game works. All right, we're ready to start a game here, and the first part is the shadow phase, and this is where this marker moves up the menace track. Now, if it were to ever cross this one right here, we would get to this event, or we would call this card here, and boom, all of a sudden we have an effect. So like this one here, it says if a shadow is in a land and it has one extra life points. So you're going to put that in there. Could be effective for the whole game, could be instant. There are different ones in the game. I'll leave that to you to check out a little bit later. Now we're going to have our shadow actions. So these are blips. They are on the lower end of the totem pole, but we have first we're going to have our boss if we had a boss. More than likely this would just be in a boss battle, but I just wanted to show you that and kind of show you both sides. They have their own deck. And then we have our heralds, which are the hunters, which I don't have a mini for. I only have standees for. And then we also have our awakener. These are going to have, they're bigger. They're going to have their own AI where they just kind of aggressively move towards you. But just wanted to show you some of the cool artwork that's on there. Okay. So they're going to take their move, and then our pesky shadows will start moving. They are the guys who are trying to find us and whatnot, and we'll unveil them, but I'll kind of get to that a little bit later. But these blips are going to do the majority of the movement, and that movement is going to be determined by these die. Okay, so we have a gravity die, okay, which says alpha and omega, and then it has a plus. Okay, so we'll roll this die, and it will tell us which way these blips will go. Okay, so everything that's on here is going to be moving towards alpha and omega. Okay, so we have alpha here, we have omega here on the map. What will happen is because it's alpha plus, it's going to go 1, 2 onto towards that. So these guys will all gravitate towards that twice. Okay, and this one will gravitate towards this twice. So now this is really close. That blip could actually do damage next time to the citadel, and it would do exactly 2 damage, which is based on the scenario. Sorry, based on the scenario, which will tell you how much damage they have or what they are. You will also generate. So this is a generation die, and it will tell you where it will generate, and it also could possibly charge up the herald, and that's how it's released or called. So I would roll that, and it would tell me at all these circle spots, these places of generation, I will add blips from a bag. Okay, I'm going to, sorry, I don't want to do that off screen. And I'm going to draw from the bag. I'm going to draw one for each one of these. And when they come out, they're going to come out closest to the citadel. So This one will come right here, so it's going to be closest to the citadel. This one over here, way out of screen, like that. I'm just going to show you the ones that you can see. Okay, and then that would be your kind of shadow phase. Now we're going to go ahead and move to our side, which is the player's phase. But as you can see, it's very, very quick. We're in the beginning of the player's phase, but I want to make sure you understand what's going on a player's area here for each character. This is going to be a board that tells you a lot of stuff about them. They're going to have 3 actions on their turn. You're also going to have 2 movement, and you can pay for more of these things. And I'm assuming if you develop, you'll get better at all of these things. This is your character card. It's going to tell you where your weapon goes and where your light source thing goes as well, your lantern, I should say. And then it's also going to tell you what happens when you get a critical roll on one of your die rolls right here in your attack die. It's also going to tell you your movement, your natural movement, and also what you need to pay to take an additional set of movement. So you can actually pay some lux to continue movement. Just like that, you also have your weapon. It's going to tell you what you can do and how far you can shoot and kind of what your shooting pattern is. And the lighter ones will say those are like you can shoot multiple spots like that. There'll also be some that are gray around the sides. And there'll also be things like this. There'll be different patterns completely for all these things. So I just wanted to kind of show you a couple different situations that can occur in this game. And they'll all be different because the characters are all different. But anyway, you'll also have this kind of overcharged spot right here. This could possibly damage your weapon, but it does more damage. And we'll cover that a little bit later. But then you also have, and this is the most important part, your lux track here. So you'll have 8 and you'll go down to 0. You'll be taking action, spending this right here. It'll tell you how much you need to spend to do certain things. But then, okay, when you get down to 0, it's going to flip over. And this is going to be your resources for your life for the whole game, right? So this goes down, you go to 8, you go all the way back down, and this is gone. And what eventually happens is you run out of energy and you go down here. So now all of a sudden you're in a kind of a frantic mode. You can do some pretty crazy stuff as far as breaking some of the rules, but you're also on the verge of dying. Okay, and when you run out of that, it's over. Okay, so that's the player board in a nutshell. Now let's get into some actual actions in the game. Now I'm going to be moving these figures around and making up examples, so just pay attention because sometimes it won't seem like I'm following rules, but I'm going to be moving things around so you can understand what's going on. All right, so the first part of your phase is to make sure you don't have any effects because sometimes there are effects that happen to you in the game, and I got a big deck to prove it over here. There's a lot of them that can happen to you. The next part is you're going to refill your hand to 5 cards. So over in the character area here, I'm going to pull out some cards that depend on, and this is always going to depend on my character type. It'll tell me how many cards I'm supposed to have. I would pull those cards and they would be in my hand. Now I should say that cards are multi-use. So when you take a card, you're going to be looking at the top left corner. Okay, the top left corner is going to make actions cost less. You're going to also have the abilities that are on here as well. And then you also can use them for defense when the enemies attack you. So you have several uses for these cards. Then you can take 3 actions, and it's stated right here on your player board like this. And the first one, let's just talk about, is movement. And this is not an official action, but of course it's something that you're going to do on your turn. You would go ahead and move your natural amount of movement. For me, it's 2. Some people have 3 movement. They're kind of, it depends on how you move. I'm going to go ahead and move my Cyclops 1 spot, just like that. As long as I have a path, I can move on the light path. And you never want to be stuck out here because it's going to cost you more of your Lux energy. It costs you 2. You never want to be stuck in the void. You can't move. All right, so now I'm going to do what's called constructing. I'm going to construct a light path. The light path is constructed according to what's on my lantern right here. It's going to show what pattern I can use, and the patterns are different for each character. So I'm going to actually use the amount of Lux it says to do so. I'm going to go ahead and do 1 here to create it. So it's going to be 1, and I'm going to create 2. So I'm going to go ahead and spend my 2 Lux. And when I do that, I will draw from a bag, this big old bag right here, and I will draw from this big old bag, and then I will place these one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Place 1 here, and then I'm going to place another. Let's see, I'm going to place another one here. All right, now what I've done is I've created this kind of synergy right here, this 3 trifecta right here, and when I do that, I actually get a bonus, but there's actually a good and a bad thing about it. The good thing is that I get what's called Umbra. This is actual money in the game. It's used to buy things in the game, but I will keep that. But what it does is it also messes up kind of the light bridge that I've created here, this light path that I've created. And now it's flipped over. Now this can actually happen twice. So if you get unlucky enough to have it happen twice, you may have a lot of money, but now you have a dimmer path to move on. Now if I wanted to move even further or create more, I can do so. It's just going to cost me more of my Umbra. But for movement's sake, let's say I wanted to move again, I would have to pay double. Okay, so my first movement is free. I'd have to pay double the Umbra, which is going to be 2. And if I want to double it up again, I can move my full movement. And if I wanted to spend more to even do it again, I would triple that cost. So there's a really interesting thing to movement here. And it's also you spending your Umbra. But remember, I can also use cards to mitigate that as well. So I could have paid a card to make sure that I don't pay anything for the extra movement, or pay 2 cards for my hand, that kind of thing like that. So it's kind of a, hand management. Now let's say for instance, I'm going to move something out here. Let's say I wanted to reveal something. Okay, let's say there was one of these shadows out here in front of me. Now what I would do is I would look at the distance on my character card, and I would decide if it's in range, and when I do, I would reveal it. When I reveal it, we'll find out what kind of monster it is. It happens to be a moth. Okay, so it happens to be a moth, and when we put the moth out there, we get to grab the moth, put them out there, they will have an instant reaction. It says this one will move one cell away from the scout. So it's going to move back. It's going to get some distance between me and it. And guess what? Because of that movement, I can't attack it. Okay, so it kind of moved out of my range, which is pretty interesting. All right, so that's kind of the tactical part of Revelation, and that is another action. You also can't attack. So I'm going to put them in range. When they are in attack range, you're going to take one of your die and roll them. And if they're not revealed, you're going to have a very low chance of hitting them. So if they're in the shadow form still, in the blip form, you cannot, you're really going to have a hard time hitting them. I think it's 2 out of 6 chances. But if you do this, you always have the maximum chances of hit. There's one that's like a -1 hit, but you're just going to have hits, and this is a crit right here, actually. That one is going to allow me to draw 2 cards, which it says on my actual card. So I would attack them. It would be 2 damage, because it says on my card that how much damage I put out. It has 2 health. But let's say it had 3 health, and I really wanted to press it a little bit there. I can use what's called like an overcharge shot, pay the Lux to do so, and it's going to give 3 attack to this thing, and it would kill it. But it's also going to add to damaging my weapon, so I could possibly damage my weapon, and I would have to perform a repair action, which is really just me, and I'll show you over here. Let me pull this back up. I'll take my card, and I'd flip it over when I reach a certain amount, and I'd flip it over, and I would have to spend spend actions in Umbra to fix it. Okay, there's actually characters that are better at that than others. Okay, so let's get a little bit further down the line here. And I'm just going to make this happen. So let's get to this part. Okay, so we moved in. Now what's going to happen is we're going to discover a land. Okay, and I should say this before we move in. We can go all the way back and purchase. So as long as we have a light path, we can purchase stuff from the 6-cart market that's available. So that's another action that's there. But I want to go ahead and discover a land, because this is going to be the meat and the bones of how things happen in the game. So when I get there, it's a free action. This becomes discovered. And there's going to be different types. And remember, the missions will tell you to do so. One of the first things you can do is extract. Okay, so for one action, you can extract, and you would put a marker down there. And as long as there's a marker there and there's a bridge back, you will get one of these Umbra every round. So you'll always have something. You'll be receiving an award every round for that, basically, for having it. Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention to is this mission card right here. So you'll be looking through this big old deck for a specific card. You'll also be looking at your A and your B, which I've already done here. One of them is A, is discover. It says reach a Chronicles land and carry out the mission action. Mission action is one of our actions in the game as well. So when I do that, I would read the card, and it tells me to go to C. Okay, so I'll automatically go to the C card that's in my mission deck already. But first I want to reveal one of the cards that it says, and I would look it up, the letters that it tells me to look up. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to kind of put it down here. And you'll get something like this, which is kind of an event where you get to do some choices, or you'll get something like a test roll, a challenge test roll, something like that. Or you'll just get something that says, hey, go collect these things, go reveal 5 shadows, do this right here. It's kind of like a fetch mission. All right, so you have things that will happen, positive and negative. You're going to be playing those out, and they chain together. So for our main quest stuff, they're going to chain together. So now I'll move on to C. And C says, I'm going to get to a certain spot and do something else, and I'm going to do this roll. And it tells me what type of characters will get an additional re-roll, but I'm going to be rolling 3 die and telling me to do whatever it does. If I pass, I go somewhere. If I fail, I go the other place. And that's pretty cool. It kind of develops the story as you go along, but that's basically all your actions. You're going to be able to move around. You're going to be able to build these light bridges so you can kind of get around, and you don't want to get stuck out in the darkness. You're going to be discovering these lands, and you're going to be opening up the quest or missions for this game. And then you're trying to fight these beasts off, these little nasties off, and all the heralds and bosses and things like that. Extracting resources, purchasing things, trying to get development points for factions and also for your build, for your citadel as well, which I'm not going to touch on too much because I didn't have enough materials for that. And that is the run of the game. Let's go ahead and get to my final thoughts. All right, party people, final thoughts here on Sheol. Now, this is definitely going to be one of the most unique and immersive experiences that I've had with a prototype in 2020. Partly because they really leaned into the narrative in this game. The cards, the flavor text on the cards is actually really well written, and the introductory scenario, even though it's not going to be in the game, is a good precursor. They even sent me a booklet to kind of explain the scene, you know, like kind of what's going on, and it was really well written. So I was like, okay, I'm in. Let's read some stuff. And that's a good sign, because that's what a lot of big game campaign games lack, and I think they're really leaning into it. They even wrote up like, hey, we're going to write more, we're going to write more. So I felt that. Now the gameplay is, it's got a lot of unique puzzle things going on with the light bridge. It's got the, you know, the pressure of management from the threat track from the enemies to how you use your lucks to move around, to take actions, and also survive. And your hand management. There's so much in there. And then some things that I didn't even tap into were was the Citadel development. And that's an interesting thing. You have the branching path stuff, which is really welcome because you have missions that you need to go through, but you also have things that can pull you away to different spots. So it's got more to it than I even thought. Kind of exceeded my expectations in that department. This is definitely a lot more complex than you would think, and I'm really just digging that. The solo mode I did not get a chance to play, but they did finish up that part of the rule book, and it looks really solid. Although I could play 2, 3-handed, 4-handed with this one, just because I like to make my brain melt. And this is definitely not going to be an easy game. Definitely not going to be an easy game. There's going to be a lot of pressure on you. But I think I'll leave it right there. I'll just kind of, I don't want to flex too hard on a lot of these points, but you can tell that it was a really impressive experience. Just remember, I can't tell you what to do with your money, and all I can do is help you make an informed back-end decision. And with that, I'd like to thank the publisher for sponsoring this video, and I'd like to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. I try to reply as fast as possible, especially in the first week. And with that, feel free to like and subscribe. You guys have a wonderful day.